testing. There we go. I'm not great at technology. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Congressman DeSaulnier's Town Hall on Transportation and Education here in the beautiful city of San Ramon. Thank you all for joining us. I know you were doing your Grinch run today down the street, so I'm sorry I didn't put on my outfit for you. Just a brief run of show. So we'll be doing some introductions. The Congressman will do a brief PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll move on to the question and answer section. We may not be able to get through all of the questions today. If that's the case, then your question will be answered as long as we have enough information on that question card. Just to kind of introduce some of the individuals that we have here in the room from our staff. We have Alex Stone here. He is our district caseworker in the back. We have Caroline Francois, our community director. And then we have Kaylee DeLand, our community outreach coordinator. Somewhere out, I believe, out in the lobby, we have Brooke Wilson, our scheduler, and we have Gabby Amini, our district representative. We do have some elected officials here in the audience today that we would like to acknowledge. We have Susanna Ordway with the San Ramon Valley School Board with us. Oh, she's right here. Also with the school board, we have Rachel Hurd sitting next to her. We have Carol Muscali, a district representative with Supervisor Anderson's office. I believe I just saw Marisol Rubio with San Ramon. There we go, on your council here. And then with that, I'd like to introduce your mayor, Mark Armstrong, who will be saying a few words.
Thank you, Ryan. Let's give the staff a great job for putting this thing on today. Again, I'm Mark Armstrong, I'm mayor of the city of San Ramon, and I want to welcome you all to this town hall. It's a really important topic we're going to talk about today. And I also want to welcome, again, to the city of San Ramon, Congressman Mark DeSaulnier. And this is a really important topic for us. We talk about education and transportation. The congressman is well positioned to talk about this. He served at the city level in the city of Concord, at the county level, as well as at the state, in the Senate, and as a representative. And now he serves on a lot of important committees at the federal level. So he's on the committee for housing and workforce, or for education and workforce, and for transportation and infrastructure, several other subcommittees and caucuses. But he's the right guy to talk to us about the subject we have today. And it's really important to us here in San Ramon. We have a lot of local issues that we have to deal with in terms of transportation as we build out our city core area around Bishop Ranch. But we also have a lot of our residents who work down in Silicon Valley or take transit into San Francisco. We have a lot of our workforce that works in the city of San Ramon that has to commute in from the Central Valley. We've got a fantastic school district, but they have some funding challenges. The local control funding formula just doesn't work for our district, but we have an award-winning school district nonetheless. So a lot of important topics, and we're going to hear about it today from the congressman, and we look forward to this discussion. With no further ado, I'll turn it over to Congressman Mark DeSaulnier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all for joining us. The mayor just came from a fun run, and I'm really interested. One of the categories for winners was the Grinch category, so next year I'm going to try to get that one. Although I have some colleagues who I think, never mind. But I do want to, Marisol, thank you for being here as school district members. Thank you all just for coming. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm very proud of, and our deputy district director forgot to introduce one key staff person, our district director. So don't worry, you're not in trouble. So Janessa runs our office. Right, our main office is in Walnut Creek. Right now at the Pleasant Hill BART station. You're always welcome to stop in, or I will meet with you individually there or out in the community. We currently have an office in Antioch, but with redistricting, if I'm lucky enough to continue to serve after the next election, we'll probably be moving that office as the district has changed. So I'll carry you through the maps. This is a fairly intensive, busy PowerPoint. How many people have been to one of our PowerPoints before? Or one of our, okay. So the frequent flyers, does that mean this is last call? Oh, sorry, used to be in the restaurant business. So if we go through this, and it's hard to keep up, just there's a lot in here, so feel free to keep up either on your device, through our social media, or through our website. All of our PowerPoints and town halls are on our website. All our legislation is on our website. So if you have questions, you remember websites, everybody? Remember, they used to be, but it's a good place to put all this information. So if I go a little quickly, it's just to get to questions. These two subjects, so just on redistricting, traditionally every 10 years, based on the census, we redistrict everywhere in the country, starting with the House of Representatives. As you may have read, it's a little controversial right now because it's in the middle of the decade where Texas and then we did Prop 50. So as is a lot of things in politics right now, redistricting is a little different. When I first got elected to Congress 11 years ago, replacing Congressman George Miller, who represented the county for most of Contra Costa for 40 years, and then many of you remember Ellen Tauscher, who represented this area for a long time, both of them very good friends and mentors. So it was more of an east-west district from Richmond all the way out to portions of East County, and then I came down to Danville, but I didn't have San Ramon. That was in Congressman Swalwell's office. The last redistricting, that switched so that I was moved out of the 80 corridor all the way to far eastern Contra Costa County and then down into Dublin. And then with Prop 50, it'll change a little bit. Funny little story about elected officials. I got a phone call when the maps were being done for Prop 50 before the voters approved them from my colleague and friend Eric Swalwell. And I go, oh, Eric's calling. I wonder what that's for. So I answered the phone and I said, let me guess, you've seen the new maps. And he laughed. He said, yes. I said, what do you want? He goes, Dublin. I said, well, that's fair. You were on the city council. You can have Dublin. What do I get? He said, I'm not sure, but I'll help, whatever. So I have a new district, and Eric, of course, you probably read, has announced he's going to run for governor. So those are just the dynamics of how we change. So with that, this is the current map. You can see this very important 680 corridor here. Very important area in the last 20 years, and we'll go through this, 30 years. When I drive down here, I often think about when I was a Republican member of the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors. Some of you will remember that period. They used to joke I was the most liberal member of the board. The other four were Democrats before I switched. But this was all, one of the biggest projects I ever got to participate in was Doherty Valley. So most of this, at the time, it was the biggest development in the history of the state of California. And I still think it's probably in the top 3, 4, 11,500 houses. So when I drive down here and the developments around them are all significant. That was largely by Chappelle Industries, a wonderful man, survivor of Auschwitz. Mr. Chappelle was very proud of this. Driving down Bollinger, I think of having lunch with him once after the first phases had been built, and he grabbed my leg and he goes, Mark, look. And I looked down the fairway and I said, Nathan, what are you looking at? He goes, houses, aren't they beautiful? And I'm like, only a developer could look at houses. So, anyways, it's just, that's a little trip down memory lane because it's a good reminder about how dynamic this area has been in the growth of California. And I also used to tease some of those developers. They didn't know Silicon Valley was going to happen quite the way it did. So location, location, location. This is really important. So the mayor mentioned all of us at every level of government, we develop backgrounds and expertise in certain areas. In Contra Costa and Alameda County, the time I've been in politics, which 3 decades, the two of the most consistent important things in polls and focus groups are education and transportation, as you could all understand why. So I am a senior member of the education, and it's funny, just politics. When Democrats are in charge of the House, the committee is called the Education and Labor Committee. When Republicans are in charge, it turns to workforce. It's just a funny little political thing. Some of my friends can't say labor, but so. That's the second bullet I'm proud of. That's an important committee, or I should say the first one, health, employment, labor, and education. Besides these issue areas, health, both medical health and behavioral health have been important to me in my career. So I spent a lot of time on that. So I also love the acronym HELP. So the committee in the Senate, the ranking Democrat is Bernie Sanders, so I'm the one on this. In the House, it's the subcommittee. And then transportation infrastructure, I've spent a lot of time on that. In the legislature, I was the chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee and then the Senate Housing Transportation Committee. So it's been a struggle to keep up with all this development and deal with congestion and getting people to work and getting to home to see their kids on time. And we've got some other slides about that. And then the last bullet is important, as you can imagine right now. Our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, asked me to go on the Ethics Committee a couple of years ago, and I'm now the ranking Democrat. If we win the majority, the Democrats, I'll be the chair of that committee. It's really an interesting committee. It's the only committee that is required by rules to have equal members of both the majority and the minority. So there are 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats. And we've been busy, if you may have been reading. I can't talk about all of it. It's a little bit like a grand jury, but it's an important committee. So this is the first thing. It's always a little difficult to do this. I mean, policy and politics are, interconnected in many ways, but we have to make sure that when we're here by ethics rules is that I'm not campaigning. And I know people go, well, how do you do that and talk about policy? But there's a line there we adhere to. So if you start asking questions that are a little too campaigny and political, then I'll just have to remind you I have to do that outside. It's also confusing because you'll see members have town halls, but they have to differentiate. They have to say, I'm paying for this on campaign funds. And you can understand this is a government function. All of the staff people are paid for by everybody, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives. So this is a clarification, and sometimes it's hard to follow, but I think you can understand. So we highlighted the most important points, but all of you know this. I always say about the Bay Area and traffic in California in general. In the restaurant business, as I mentioned, I was into for years, people would complain there wasn't enough parking, and the answer was, well, there's a problem for the ownership when there's too much empty parking spaces, meaning you want to be busy and you want people to be able to still access your business. Similarly, in the Bay Area, we've been very successful. People want to live here, but there are trade-offs for that. And congestion and high costs are something that are a struggle to deal with. So you meet that balance where it's an attractive place to be, you're protecting the environment, but you're also dealing with the fact that there are demands. And one of the demands in our area is the financial center where all the jobs were changed dramatically. Downtown San Francisco, particularly in the last 5 years, it got more dispersed. So Bishop Ranch, Hacienda were good things, but we constantly try to provide more housing closer, more jobs closer to housing. And in San Francisco's case, we were always regionally trying to push them to do more housing and less jobs. And it's been a struggle in the Bay Area in particular, not just because of our growth, but because of our geography. You've got a large body of the water in the middle of it. You've got seismic issues. You've got the ranges, the Berkeley Hills and the coastal hills. So all of that has been a struggle over the years. And as you see, that highlights 6 of the 15 mega commutes in the country were in California, and as many of 4 of them changes, and that means an hour to work and home every day as a minimum. So we've got ones that are worse than that when you've got people out in Tracy driving into Silicon Valley or into the financial district. And so one of the last yellow was just almost 80% of residents polled in the Bay Area says that congestion is a big problem. And when you think of the time people aren't at home with their kids or aren't able to be at home and doing other things, that's a big sacrifice. We're really the only developed country that doesn't have employers have a direct tax on transportation. And my friends in business don't like me bringing this up, but when you have that kind of skin in the game, I think it changes. And there's other things that work when you look at developed countries in Europe or Japan. The density's higher, the cultures are different, but there are things that we should talk about that we could learn from them as we become more urbanized in an area like the Bay Area. And you'll see that one of the things I'm proud of, when we were on the board, we got a voter-approved urban limit line. They're about to redo that so that all the cities in the county agreed, and Contra Costa, Alameda has a similar one. but I was on the board and I was very involved with this, where if any of the cities or the jurisdictions deviate from the voter-approved urban growth boundary, they don't get their traffic funds. So it's worked really well to try to redirect development into urban cores where you've got a little higher density, so you've got 3 to 5 story buildings if you go into Walnut Creek, if here, and young people prefer that, as the surveys show, that they prefer it to single family detached homes. So trying to do that is really important, and then trying to get transit so people have choices, so they don't have to drive a single family car or a single occupancy car. Anyways, next. This is illustrative. I love graphs. It's just, again, the peak, and if you follow it, the pandemic changed this a lot. So we've been trying to, with local government and with state officials, figure out how we can facilitate this. As a former restaurant owner who owned a restaurant in the financial district in San Francisco for a while, right by Salesforce Tower, you want that density, but we have to consider that maybe if people can work 3 days a week in person and 2 days, that takes a lot of pressure off of congestion. It allows for 2-income households who have kids to have more time at home with their kids. So the Bay Area has been important for this, is trying to figure out how employers get the benefit of having workers physically in place, but also everybody gets the benefit of certain professions like software folks who can stay at home at least 2 days a week. So it's been an interesting dynamic. When I was in the legislature, I was chair of the Labor Committee before transportation. We changed the law to help with what's called 410s, so that people could work 4 days a week, 10-hour days. So the overtime, we worked that out with the employers so that you got 3 days a week where you didn't have to commute into the city, and it really helped with congestion. Not enough, but it was a good start. So we're trying to follow on that. You are, years ago, when there was a BART strike, I was in the mayor of San Francisco's outer office with a BART director from down here, and then we went in and talked to Mayor Brown about the BART strike that we were trying to avoid. And the BART director at the time, a fellow named Dan Richards, said, you know, the problem with the Bay Area is politicians think the center of the Bay Area is this office, the mayor's office in San Francisco, when really the geographic area in the Bay Area is 680, 580 in Dublin. So this is illustrative of just what you see here. The tri-valley population has grown so much. When you think of the Bay Area in terms of major commute routes in and out of the Bay Area as the region has grown, you've got the 80 corridor, you've got this corridor, and then you've got 101. So that's where people come in and out. As the region has grown from what's defined as the 9 Bay Area counties, and Alameda and Contra Costa are the eastern boundaries of those. When you now go out to places like Mountain House, it's more like a 19 county region, which includes Sacramento, because people are moving around, as you all know. But you're right in the center of this. We are right at the center of this. So how we manage this is a real challenge. We have a grant with the Contra Costa Transportation Authority that worked with Alameda's. So those transportation agencies are governed by a group of local electeds. When I was a county supervisor, I was on the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. We have a grant they worked very hard on, and I'd encourage you all to go look at it on their website for 680. It's $166 million. We're waiting with fingers crossed just to get the final approval from a large white building in Washington, D.C. When he first got elected, I went to one of my mentors, Nancy Pelosi, on the floor of the House, and I said, should I push this? She said, no, why don't we just be quiet about it for a little while, because we don't want him to delay it. But it's been approved by the Department of Transportation. It should just come out. It's 680 all the way from Martinez all the way down through San Ramon. $166 million. That'll be, contracts will be, they're in the process of getting prepared, and it will do a lot of great things. It'll create a greater capacity, but more for HOV and bus routes. So we'll do more bus routes, peak trips to Bishop Ranch and Hacienda, which we've done for years from Walnut Creek and Dublin. And then the really cool part about this, it's integrated with other things that we've done. Every street light in Contra Costa, this will be the first county in the country that has this, will be connected to the interstate system. So in a transportation systems management site, they'll be able to watch in real time if there's an accident in the traffic flow and adjust that with every street light in the county. Now, it's going to take 5 to 10 years to implement it, and it's all with best available technology in terms of the hardware and the software. So I'm really excited. I put a lot of time into that, and that'll be an exciting project. There's some other things in here. The last bullet has become controversial. Just being able to use, if you've got an EV, you can use the HOV lanes. I have an electric vehicle, and it's nice to have, but particularly when I go to SFO to go back to DC, last week I looked at that lane, and I was stuck with everybody else because the federal law that allowed us to do that on an interstate, we lost it. So I've been working with a Republican member from New York who has a similar problem to get that changed so we can keep using it. It helps incentivize people to buy electric vehicles. The Bay Area leads the country. It's called early adapters. That's what the car companies call places like this. It's San Francisco, LA, Boston, DC. 25% of the new cars bought last year were EVs. So they know where people are more open to trying new technologies and are more environmentally, what the word I'm choosing, they're more inclined to look at environmental issues when they purchase, and that's us right here. So that's one thing. Another thing we're doing. In the big infrastructure bill, I had a bill called the Clean Corridors. I used to be on the California Air Resources Board. I was appointed by 3 governors, 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. So I've been very involved in air quality for a long time. The bill, the Clean Corridor, was to put more infrastructure, because one of our problems with transitioning to clean fuels is you've got to have the infrastructure, the transmission lines, the clean sources to begin with. That bill started as a $1 billion grant project. The Biden administration, it was a priority for them. So they called and said, is it okay if we raise it? So it's about $5 billion. It's been held up by this administration. But this corridor is like one of the peak corridors for all of that infrastructure for the reasons I mentioned before, because people are buying the product, and we want to make sure that they have the infrastructure to be able to charge their cars in a thoughtful way. Next. Try to get a little faster here. Community project funding, these used to be called earmarks, and then members of Congress did stupid things with them, so we got rid of them. We started them again. We were in the majority. Congressman Rosa DeLauro, a good friend, who, if you've ever seen her on TV, she's a dynamo. She's got purple hair all the time. She's the chair when we're in charge of the Appropriations Committee. So we started these and called them community benefit projects with much more stringent oversight. And they've been great, and I've been very proud of the stuff we've been able to get done. So you can see they're all in these subject areas largely. There's a lot mental health that we've been able to do in that regard. Those streetlight projects that I mentioned, we were able to get $3 million for that. Another project I'm proud of is called Anywhere, Anytime. It helps local law enforcement. So if you call 988, we did this to work with the health department, public health department, and the police departments. If you're having a behavioral health issue and you call for emergency, the first responders now in most of the county will be public health officers backed up by the local police department. So they know, generally they know who the clients are, unfortunately, and they show up first. It's safer for the police officers, and usually what they do is they just go interact. I've been on ride-alongs with them. It's really quite remarkable, and it's efficient. The rest of the country is doing more and more of this. So if you're in crisis and you call, the dispatchers are trained to go, okay, this is a 988 call. We're going to dispatch public health, and we'll dispatch law enforcement right behind them so that if they're needed. But it's really something that we should be proud of. It's been very effective, and all the police chiefs were very supportive of it, and it's worked. We've had it probably for about, in different parts of the county, for about 3-4 years, and it's really doing a good job. So a lot of our work has been trying to deal with the pressure of families. One of the bills I got passed, it's out now over $100 million with a Republican colleague who's on the Education Committee with me, Glenn Thompson, a wonderful man. We disagree with some about things, but he and I created these statewide family engagement centers. One of the things we know for two-income households is the more you can get the parents engaged with their kids' education, the more successful everyone's going to be. So that was started out at 20 million. It's now over 100 million nationally, and it works. It provides for more counselors. It provides for more space. So the school board members will tell you this: having the parents who are very busy, having more resources to be engaged with their kids, teachers, and administrators makes everybody more successful. Mental Health Matters Act, I've been involved with this. My dad took his life in 1989, so on a personal level, I became more involved with issues around depression. We've learned more about how this works in the last 50 years because of genetics and imaging than we have in thousands of years of human development. The problem is we're not deploying that information. UCSF and Stanford are leaders in this. So Mental Health Matters Act is trying to get more people to go into the field, to become counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists. Since we got parity in the Affordable Care Act, there's been a 300% increase nationally for people who are interested in getting behavioral health, and we've done a lot with bringing the stigma down so people will go and get help. The problem is we've had a 300% decrease in young people going into the field, so that's the deployment of all this information. Mental Health Matters Act got out of the House with bipartisan support, didn't get out of the Senate, so we're working with our Republican colleagues to try to get that done. All right, let's see. Pell Grants we spent a lot of time with. I don't know who that guy is, but boy, his hair's changed color. I attribute that to certain people, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Pell Grants are important. So what we heard, and I heard this spending time in the Bay Area, but around the country with college students, was that Pell Grants are our biggest federal investment in young people getting into college and getting, particularly kids who don't have the resources as education's become more expensive. We listen to them, particularly at Berkeley, listen to these brilliant young kids talk about the pressure on them for housing and food. You'd be shocked at how many kids who are in bachelor's programs and graduate programs who are food insecure, which means they can't get enough to eat when they're in college. So what Pell Grants did was, we got a bill passed with bipartisan support that makes it a little more flexible so that they can use those grants for other than just tuition, and they still have to go through really good oversight. So you make sure that, but for housing, for instance, in the UC system in the urban areas, as you can imagine, getting housing is really hard. I was just over at the Cal game when they beat SMU, which was fun, and the Chancellor and I were talking about People's Park. For those of us older enough to remember, if you go over now, whether you agree with what happened or not, there was a demand for housing, so now there's student housing going on there. So the Pell Grant provided more flexibility when we try to figure out how we provide for talented people to be able to get their undergraduate degree in particular. So that was something, again, you hear about how divisive the Congress is, and it is, but we still have these areas where a lot of us work together, understanding that their constituents wouldn't elect me, and my constituents wouldn't elect them. That's the way the country is. So how do we find opportunities to work together? We still do that, but it has become more difficult. Next. Is that it? No. All right, that's it. So these are our offices. I mentioned them to you. Please feel free. I try to be very accessible. We're very proud of the fact that over the last 11 years, we've done more town halls than any other member of Congress. So we try to be very accessible. So you're not in trouble yet.
Now I have my own. There we go.
We call ourselves the Blues Brothers, if you remember that.
I'm back. Hello again. Just once again, just to do a quick overview, you have them. Any question cards that you've already submitted to us, we have in this basket over there. For fairness, I will blindly randomly grab one out, so I'm not picking and choosing. If you have a question card that's filled out, you could raise it in the air, and staff will come around and grab it and add it to our grab bag. If at any point you have a question that comes up, you could raise your hand if you don't have a question card still, and somebody can bring you a question card or an additional pencil if necessary. Once again, we may not be able to get through all of our question cards, and as I see more going into that pile, I don't think we will. So we will respond to all of them as long as we have your information on there to do so, and they are not considered campaign and political. And I will have to skip any of those as well. Our first question is from Stephen. Are there any public-private initiatives which you support for education in graduate schools in light of current loan guidelines?
Trying to think of specifics, but yes, there are. Particularly on the workforce development side, we try to work closely, obviously, with employers. We work with the researchers to figure out, here's a perfect example, where we are right now is to figure out where the jobs are. And right now it's very dynamic, including here, because the tech industry, is thriving, creating a lot of jobs. And if you've read, there have been quite a few layoffs. So they readjust, we have to readjust, and government frequently is behind this. So trying to develop public-private partnerships, we are about to reauthorize the Workforce Investment Act. So that's one of the places where we work on this specifically. The Workforce Investment Act is meant to work with employers, with the public sector. Here in Contra Costa, the Workforce Investment Board is governed out of the Board of Supervisors with partnerships. So we try to work with the private sector and employers, obviously, to ask them and their statutes. And we at the Education and Labor Committee and work on the workforce development side, that's our jurisdiction. So we passed it out of the House last session. A session is 2 years. And then the Senate didn't pick it up. So we have to do this. A lot of federal legislation is done through these big bills that are subject area specific. So we're also reauthorizing the Surface and Transportation Act in the Transportation Committee. So that's where, as a member, you strategically try to figure out what is about to be reauthorized. And generally, it's supposed to be done every 5 years. And then you work on bills that then become part of that larger bill. So in this instance, where you're looking at partnerships, we do a lot of that. And we can, whoever asks the question, if you want to contact us, we can give you more specific examples. But I'll just tell you, for instance, in the Bay Area in California, so there's county and regional statewide boards. In the Bay Area, it's county boards. And then they go up and they're part underneath the state Workforce Development Board. When I was chair of the Labor Committee, I was an ex officio member of that. So all the way along the line, you're trying to see modeling and work with employers, both public and private, to figure out these are the changes in the workforce. How do we adapt to that? Whether it's in high school or career tech, how do we adapt to that? So we do have a lot of public-private partnerships with that. We have to, because most of the employers obviously are private sector employers. But I'll tell you, it's right in the Bay Area, it's a challenge right now because we're changing. We were down here last night for our app challenge, which was wonderful. There's a congressional app challenge every year, and you get these young kids who apply nationally, and then you get recognized in each of the 435 districts. Man, those kids are so smart. One of the kids had this app where you can ask a historical figure on your phone questions. So I said, well, I'll ask Abraham Lincoln. So it's really remarkable. Abraham Lincoln's answering your questions. A little scary, the AI stuff we have to figure out, obviously. But I had a conversation with Abraham Lincoln about you people last night with a person who's a junior at Emerald High School.
Our next question comes from Bob. What is the outlook for federal special education money within this administration?
Bob, that's been a priority for me for years. Got involved with it by accident. I was a county supervisor, and we didn't have enough money, so we were going to close some special needs sites in the county, and we came in with money and kept them open. So I got to know the community. Because it's in the Education and Labor Committee, I'm allowed to be an advocate for it. And when the administration first suggested closing the Department of Education, I was very adamant on the floor and in the committee about not doing that, because only about 10% nationally of education funds are under the federal Department of Education. But most of their work is to protect communities that are protected by the Civil Rights Act. One of those communities is special needs kids. Special needs kids have grown because of all autism and other behavioral health issues. We can't be cutting services for them right when the demand is growing on those families, the kids and the parents. So this has been a particular passion for me. This week we were discussing it. The administration's pivoted, and I'll take some credit for this, where they're now saying they still want to close the Department of Education, but they want to protect all the funding for special ed. They're still going against other protected classes, people of color, kids in more impoverished areas. So while we fight that, we continue to fight special ed. Special ed also is very underfunded. Gerald Ford Republican president, signed the IDEA Act, Individuals with Disability in Education Act, so it was bipartisan. Well, the federal government promised to provide 40% of the funding. I think we're at like 12% right now, and we've never been higher than 15%. So school districts are constantly, right? You never have enough. And at the same time when you've got more demands. So this is a particular passion for me. We have had success at getting them not moving it out of the Department of Education. We can look at efficiencies, but that's where the expertise is that the states rely on the last question, research, both for the private sector and the public sector, as the needs of these families and kids change. But we can't get enough special ed teachers, right? The turnover is huge, and trying to get young people to go into that field who are really talented is hard. So I would say that most members in Congress see me as one of the lead advocates for special education, and it's a real challenge. But it's a huge need. Good friend, served with the legislature, Jared Huffman. He has a son who's got special ed. He's grown now. But he has the bill that would require the federal government to reach the 40% that Gerald Ford guaranteed that we would do all those years before. And I also remind my Republican friends, Ronald Reagan was a big advocate for special ed too. So it's a great question, but it's a huge challenge.
Our next question comes from Dave. Why don't you appear as a co-sponsor on H.R. 3747, the ADAPT Act? The act will be life-changing at improving dementia care.
That's a good question. I don't know why. But we'll find out, and we will answer your question. A lot of these bills will come up quickly, and we've got 15 employees. They work real hard between D.C. and here, so trying to keep up with them. But I would be very supportive of helping people with dementia or Alzheimer's, but I don't know why specifically. In the California legislature, you're allowed to introduce, when I was there, each member got to do 40 bills for a 2-year cycle. In the Congress, there is no limit, so lots of people drop. There's a lot of bills, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with them. And depending on how aggressive the sponsors are in contacting and getting people to sign on, and sometimes it's us too, just not being able to keep up. So we'll find out.
Our next question comes from Michael. Social Security cuts in 2033. Why is this not being addressed?
God. Well, we try every year. John Larson from Connecticut is a colleague who's been our lead on this. Every year he introduces a bill that fixes Social Security, capping and changing the income levels so that from a fiduciary standpoint, there's enough money to continue based on what the needs are projected for the next 30 years and the revenue source. So we just need to take that up. There's a variety of reasons why members don't want to and historically don't, because there are winners and losers in that. So given this is one of those subject areas where you look at it and go, why don't we just get together and fix this? And it really should be. I'm a co-author of John's legislation every year that would just adapt a financial model that would, the actuaries would have come in and said, yeah, this will fix the problem, but it takes some of the loopholes in Social Security, particularly in income levels. So if you're making $1 billion a year, you don't need Social Security. I'm exaggerating, but changing the cap would make a big difference. That would be the single biggest thing. But there's really no excuse. We should fix it.
Our next question comes from Adrian. I moved to Danville in 2018 and I commute to San Jose sometimes. 680 is a nightmare and public transportation is not better. Why is work on 680 taking so long?
Oh my God. I always like to joke when I take credit for being involved in transportation for so long. When I got to Congress, I'd tell people when I come home, I'd say, it's not my fault. It wasn't so bad when I left, which isn't true. Bijan? I shouldn't target people who have lots of experience in this. It's just a challenge, as I said. Coming down to the event last night, I was just thinking, I live in Concord out by the Clayton line, so I come down Ignacio Valley Road down. And it's a challenge to keep up with this. It really is. So the commute has to be fixed. And one of the reasons I stick at it, at both of these subject matters, is we don't do a good job of talking about the quality of life issues and how we can sustain, particularly places like the Bay Area, that are huge job creators, all the wonderful things about this area, but we have to provide the infrastructure in a smart way. And the quality of life issue is to make sure people get home. I walked precincts in Antioch years ago, and I'd asked a mentor of mine, Tom Torlickson, who was the first Contra Costan elected statewide office when he became the superintendent of public instruction. The current superintendent of public instruction is also from Contra Costa, which is a reflection on my earlier comments about how important education is in this area. But I was walking door to door, and I'd asked Tom, I said, how do I engage people in East County when I go to the door? And he said, just ask them how their commute is. I'm like, boy. Because when you go door to door, it's sort of like, I don't want to talk to you. But then if there's a pause, you're like, here's a chance. Just tell me, how's your commute? And this young woman said, well, my husband and I bought this house. I live in I work at Silicon Valley. I said, Silicon Valley? I'd asked her how her commute was, and she said, this is not bad. This is 20 years ago. And I said, well, where do you work? She said, Silicon Valley. I said, explain to me how you're in far eastern Antioch and your commute isn't bad. And he said, well, she said, when I got pregnant with my third child, I went to the manager and said, I'm a concierge at the Santa Clara Hyatt. I said, rather than driving down there to be at the desk in the lobby, could I do this remotely from one of my bedrooms a couple days a week? So they did it, and then it became a national policy. But that's illustrative. And so the Contra Costa Times did a story about her because I had told them about it. And the best part of the story was they said, well, why did you take all this effort and come up with this really creative idea? And she's because I spend 2 more days a week with my children. So that's sort of the commute part of the real impacts on all of us and how frustrating it is to sit, but also what a waste it is. So all these creative things we can come up with, and then just trying to keep up with it is a challenge. It's undeniable that when I turned on a 680 at 4:30 last night to come down here and was looking at the commute coming the other way, I thought of when we had a ribbon cutting to improve in Walnut Creek the 680-24 interchange years ago, and a guy in a truck pulled up, blew his horn, and goes, just open the goddamn thing, will you? And I was standing next to a guy, a wonderful former state senator, Richard Rainey, who had been our sheriff. And I said, well, Dick, he has a point. It's like, what do we do to ribbon cutting? So it's just this ongoing challenge to provide enough infrastructure. I do think the things that I mentioned in the beginning, at least the modeling shows that if you could get 5% of the people to not be on peak trips, it makes an exponential change. And that also helps with public health issues like air quality. But that's a long answer to a very simple question, but it's really hard to keep up with this. The last part about this is revenue. God bless the initiative system in California, but Prop 13 protected people in their houses, which is a good thing, but it didn't connect to these other challenges. Prop 99 was a great thing because it required us to spend 40% of the general fund budget on K through 12. That was a good thing, but all these things aren't connected to how we live our lives. So sometimes we do one thing that fixes one thing, but we don't think about, well, that improved education and that improved jobs, but how do people get to those things? So we're trying to do more of that.
Our next question comes from Catherine. Can anything be done about the small number of very dangerous drivers who weave in and out and drive at excessive speeds? It's been a large problem since the pandemic. Is there any role for a federal, state, local cooperation in identifying and sanctioning these drivers?
Yes. So the federal role is the National Highway Safety Transportation Administration. So they, sort of like the Department of Education, they are studying international and national trends and local trends to figure out how to make commuting safer. They cooperate with the California Highway Patrol and Department of Transportation, and I see those drivers all the time. I don't know what they're thinking, because one of the great things about GPS, you don't get there any faster by driving like this. And we've pointed this out over and over again in educational programs. Slow down. It helps everybody. So there are programs. There will be more. Just another anecdotal story. I was out at the Contra Costa Fire District in Concord, and we've worked with them to get some grants on this to make firefighters and emergency responders safer, because they're getting hit more nationally. And they were showing me a rig, an old fire truck. Now they've got two for Contra Costa. San Ramon, I think, has got one too, but fire district. But they take these old rigs and put these big bumpers in the back of them, because they're getting hit more often when they go out on the highway. The fire trucks are, and it's because of these, this percentage of people who don't drive responsibly and are cutting in and out of the lanes. So it is a great question. We're working on it, but it's hard. The biggest thing is just trying to tell people the risk you're taking is not worth it. You're not going to get there any faster. But we're doing as much as we can. Well, that's not true. We can do more, but it's a real problem.
Our next question comes from Scott. It is a two-part question. What is the status of the California high-speed rail project? It seems like the administration wants it to fail. And what can we do about extending BART?
Okay. So I am a big supporter of what I refer to as a world-class transit system in California. I was the first person in the history of the state of California to chair a transportation committee when I was put in the assembly. I just had a meeting with the French National Railroad, which I've spent a lot of time with. When I've gone there, I paid for it myself. I've had meetings with the Minister of Transportation in Japan. We don't do a good job with heavy rail in particular. We do a great job in this country with goods movement, with freight. That's our tradition, but we don't do with commuter. When you go to other industrialized countries, Europe, Japan, it's amazing, the transit system. I was the only Democrat in the legislature who voted against high-speed rail as the chair of the committee, Transportation Committee, the last time we funded it. Well, we approved it before I left. And then there were 4 of us who voted against it 2 years before that. The reason was, it's not because I don't believe in high-speed rail. It could be a great program in here, but we picked the wrong route. We could have gone down Highway 5. The state of California owns that real estate. It's the biggest segment. It's the easiest segment to do because it's flat and because we have it. By going the route we did, we've been stuck in court because every property owner knows that they can hold out as long as they want. And then the last part of it is the French, Japanese, not so directly, but the French just said, nobody's gone over the Tehachapi's at that grade, at that speed in the world. There's no engineer who will tell you can do it. And the whole model with high-speed rail from a use standpoint was that you could get from this Transbay Terminal in downtown San Francisco to Union Station in LA, roughly the same period you could do by going to Oakland, getting on Southwest Airlines, going to LAX and getting off. That model was, quite frankly, people lied to us. I was in the legislature when so high-speed rail can be fixed, but it's going to take a long time. The voters, we approved, which I opposed. I was told by some of my friends not to tell people I told you so on this, because some of my powerful friends don't want, but it's hard not to. It's just, we should have listened to international experts, like the French, who are really good at this, the Spanish, the Japanese, Taiwan. They didn't reply for requests for proposals because they said, you can't do what you're saying you're going to do. I was criticized at the time of not being a visionary like Californians were with the Golden Gate Bridge. My response was, the Golden Gate Bridge was built, and the Bay Bridge was built during the Depression, and they were built on time, under budget, and they had a full funding source, so the private sector bought the bonds. We've never been able to do that with high-speed rail because they know there's no model for it. The route that looks the most promising right now for high-speed rail is LA to Las Vegas, because we're going Highway 10 as opposed to going in strange areas. We've got most of the property rights, but that's having struggles too as well. So I could spend a lot more time on high-speed rail, but it's a problem. And then the last part of it, as an air quality person, in terms of our inventory for carbon emissions, it actually contributes the whole time it's being built. When it's built, there's a 1% reduction in our inventory. So if you want to reduce emissions from transportation, doing projects like this without being really smart, listening to engineers, doesn't help on that side either. And since I just met with the number 2 guy with the French this past week, he's such a charming Frenchman. I'm mostly Irish, but I like to take. He's just like, oh, my friend, Monsieur de Saunier, when are you people going to learn? Like, and then he said something about, I don't want to be an arrogant Frenchman. I said, that's redundant. So it's too bad. My proposal for it is you take land use and you have higher density at the transit stations. So in our world of transportation, it's called value capture. The public sector invests in the infrastructure, and then the value of the property around there goes to the taxpayers, but it goes to the private sector. So private sector comes in, they get higher density, they have potential for more profits, but then you have people living where the transit is, so they're more likely to walk and use transit and not get stuck in traffic. That's what the rest of the developed world does. So we have a bill, and we've got language into the infrastructure bill that would help it make it easier to capture that value in the federal tax code and make sure that you get the bonding for the infrastructure and then incentivize the private sector to come in and build higher density housing that keeps people right around the transportation system. Sorry to go on so long. You can tell I've spent a lot of time on this. I love the French, though. Not to be an arrogant Frenchman. That's redundant.
So we do have time for one more question. As a reminder, if your question was not answered, we will answer it as long as we have your information or it is not politically related regarding campaigns and elections. Additionally, this town hall was recorded and will be available to rewatch on the Congressman's Facebook and YouTube. Our last question comes from Wade. Regarding education, what effect of the stopping back of federal funds within the Department of Education will it affect the local level?
Let's do 3 quick ones. I promise to answer them quickly. I usually try to find out where the clock is, and they try to get it in the room, and I just realized in the last question that I found out where the clock was. So I think I answered this question largely, is that we just want to fight what they're doing with cutting back on funds and moving the experts out of the Office of Education, or at least we want to know a study that's nonpartisan with the General Accounting Office or the Congressional Research Service to show us that we don't degrade the current services by moving these things around.
Our next question comes from Linda. As a registered nurse for over 30 years, I'm deeply concerned about how the administration is demoralizing the profession. How would the state of California continue to support nursing as a profession, and is this tied to rights and immigrants?
Great question. So we need more nurses, and again, in the Workforce Investment Act and other ways, we've got to encourage young people to go into the field. The challenge is high cost of areas like this. We've got to pay people more to get qualified people to go into the field.
Our next question is from Michael. With towns like San Ramon planning on adding new homes and apartments, with up to 30,000 new residents, what can be done to improve city, state, federal infrastructure to accommodate such as schools, police, medical services?
That we have to coordinate, and we are. I think we do a good job in this county between working with locals, the state, and and federal representatives, and we're really, we're model in many ways of what we're doing. A lot of those higher density projects, right, council members, are not always received well, but when we do them and we show people that this actually improves the quality of life and helps with revenue, people get it. I'm just trying to prove I can answer questions succinctly at the end of the town hall.
Our next question is from Mel.
I hear you laughing over here. You heard what he said? I'm surprised.
As you know, traffic. I'm sorry. This will be our last
Sorry.
question, though.
We're both mostly Irish. We can't. There's a story about, have you heard about the Irish intervention program for Irish talkers? It's called On and On and On. I'm trying not to do it.
This will be our last question. As you know, traffic congestion in Contra Costa County is horrific during rush hour. This is partly bad for those of us in East Contra Costa County because we have the furthest to go. Improvements that could help are widening of roads to be 2 lanes in both, increases and expansions of BART. I suspect that some of the obstacles. Sorry, I can't read that part. What can you do to help?
We have to act. We have to be deliberate, but we have to act with more urgency. When we got the infrastructure bill, Dan Bornstein, who's the editorial director of all the Bay Area newspapers, for the Chronicle, called me and said, "When are we going to start seeing projects?" I said, "Dan, you've been bugging me about proper oversight to these programs for years. So therein lies the challenges. You want to make sure they're thoughtfully done. We've incorporated all these things. You want to make sure there's public opportunity for public comment, which sometimes takes a long time because people don't like the projects. So all of that takes time. Can we do better? Yes. And we have done individual bills that make it faster. One was SB 375 in the legislature, which just said for the California Environmental Quality Act, if you're consistent with the regional environmental protection adapted by the regional agencies for a project, you don't have to go through it again. Try to make it easier so you don't have to go through the National Environmental Protection Act and the California. If you do California, that's more stringent than NEPA, so you should be able to get those projects done faster. All of that, we're always trying to do it faster and better, but it's a challenge. And the good news is we've been able to protect the environment in a really thoughtful way in the East Bay, but doing that and having the economy is a real challenge every day. So, sorry, I digress to my old long-winded answer on the last one. No, I just, first of all, I want to tease my deputy district director and district director for you clapping when I answered 3 questions succinctly, and you saying you didn't think it was possible for me to do it. We'll talk later. No, well, you give them a round of applause. They work really hard. And some of you have heard this before. We were recognized twice, 3 times actually, nominated 5 times with something called the Congressional Research Bureau Foundation in D.C., which is a nonpartisan nonprofit that looks at how we all manage our offices. And we are one of 6 offices in the Senate and the House that have been recognized multiple times, and that's because of our staff. They work really hard. So, thanks. So the questions, they will do their best as long as they have a place to respond to an email or a phone number or a mailing address. We'll follow up and answer the questions. And then we will do more town halls and just stay attached. If you can sign on our newsletter, you don't have to read all the complimentary things people put in there about me. You can go past that and just find out what we're doing. But I really appreciate you being here today. It's a challenging time. You're going to be reading in the next few weeks everything that went through with the shutdown, longest shutdown in the history of this country. Very inefficient. We've got the same deadline staring at us, the end of January. And we're not working on it right now. I just had a conversation with my friend I mentioned, the head of the Democratic Appropriations Ranking Member DeLauro, and we're not passing appropriations bills. That's what we're supposed to be doing right now, which is all a public process. You can watch it online, but it's just stalled. But we have to have a continuing resolution or a full budget by the end of January, or we're shut down again. And then you've been reading a lot about our advocacy for not increasing the cost of health care. If you go to the Kaiser Family Foundation or the Congressional Budget Office, we have the most expensive healthcare in the developed world, almost 18% of our GDP, but we have the worst outcomes in terms of acuity of health. There's a lot of waste in the system. Pharmacy benefit managers, I have a bill that would get rid of them. There's a lot of that. We've got increased amount of denials that we've had hearings in our committee, my committee on, where things that you are contractually with your insurance company supposed to get, claims. I've had doctors from all over the country call me and say, I've had these claims for years, and now the health insurers are just denying them. We have one employee to investigate claims for every 14,000 health plans. So one for 14,000, we can't, if your doctor says, here's a claim against your insurance company to go get it a prescription or another doctor specialist, then you get a form and said, no, it's denied. Even though contractually, the lawyers say, no, you're supposed to do it, you've done it for years. So we've got all of these problems in our healthcare system, and then about 20 million Americans are going to see an increase of almost $2,000 a year if we don't extend the tax subsidies that were in place during the Biden administration. My argument to my colleagues is so these are the two things you're going to be reading about a lot, is that we've got to fund government or we're going to shut down again by the end of January, and then these subsidies are going to go up the end of this month, affecting millions of Americans if we don't work together to figure out a solution. And that's a problem right now in the Congress, is we're very divided in this country right now, but we're supposed to work together. So those of you who have come, Virginia Fox, who's a senior member of the Education Committee, she's chair of the Rules Committee right now from North Carolina. I say she calls me her favorite socialist from San Francisco. She actually introduces me to new Republican members, and I'm like, oh, geez. But I always say to Virginia, you couldn't get elected in my district in the Bay Area. I couldn't get elected in your district, North Carolina. I respect the fact that you and your voters disagree with me and us, but that's the point. We have to find ways to work together. And on these two things, healthcare and the cost to Americans and keeping government open, you're going to be reading about a lot. And our ability to work together to solve that will be an indicator of whether we're learning or whether we're not, and the implications for the next couple elections. So I will stop there and just thank you so much for coming. If you have any follow-up questions, let us know, and we will get back